People trust machines more than you think. And honestly, that might be the most dangerous sentence I'll say today. Think about the last time you Googled something. You didn't question the result at the top. You didn't ask who wrote it, who funded the website, or whether the algorithm chose it for accuracy or engagement. You just clicked. You trusted it. Now imagine that result wasn't written by a person. Imagine it was generated by a large language model, a content farm running AI at scale, or an algorithm designed specifically to sound authoritative. Would you have known? Would you have checked? Most people wouldn't, and most people don't. Welcome to Synthetic Trust. I am, and today we are going to pull apart something that affects every single one of us. Why human beings, smart, educated, skeptical human beings, are wired to trust AI generated content, often more than they trust other humans. We're going to look at the psychology, the science, the cognitive biases, and the design tricks that make this happen. And by the end of this episode, I promise you'll never look at a confident sounding paragraph on the internet the same way again. Let's get into it. So let's start from the beginning. Not from ChatGPT, not from 2022 when everything changed. Let's start with something much older. Let's start with the human brain. Trust is not a modern invention. It's an ancient survival mechanism. Our ancestors lived in small tribes, and in those tribes, trusting the right people, the elder, who knew which plants were poisonous, the hunter who had more experience, the storyteller who preserved cultural knowledge, that trust was literally the difference between life and death. Over thousands of years, our brains developed what psychologists call heuristics, mental shortcuts that help us make quick decisions with limited information. And one of the most powerful heuristics we have is this: if something sounds certain, it's probably correct. Certainty signals competence. Competence earns trust. Here's where it gets interesting and a little unsettling. AI systems, especially large language models, are extraordinarily good at sounding certain. They don't hedge, they don't say, I'm not sure about this. They don't trail off mid sentence. They produce clean, confident, grammatically perfect prose every time. And our ancient brains, built to associate that kind of fluency with intelligence and reliability, light up in response. Research finding University of Melbourne and KPMG 2025 finds with a landmark global study of over 48,000 people across 47 countries found that 66% use AI regularly, yet only 46% say they trust it. However, the same study found that 66% of users rely on AI output without evaluating its accuracy. People use it but claim not to trust it while behaving as though they do. That's a trust paradox hiding in plain sight. So we have this fascinating contradiction. People say they're skeptical of AI, but when you watch their behavior, when you look at how often they verify AI generated outputs, how quickly they act on AI recommendations, how rarely they push back, the data tells a different story. There's a term for this in psychology, the intention behavior gap. We believe we'll be critical consumers of information, and then we're not. Part of the reason is cognitive load. In a world of infinite information, constant notifications, and more decisions per day than any human brain was designed to handle, shortcuts aren't laziness, they are survival. And AI content is designed, whether intentionally or not, to slot perfectly into those shortcuts. 66% use AI without verifying output accuracy. 56% have made work errors because of AI. 83% believe AI will deliver wide-ranging societal benefits. 46% globally willing to actually trust AI systems. Now let's get into the actual mechanisms. What are the psychological triggers that make AI content feel trustworthy even when it shouldn't? I've identified 6 of them. Think of these as the trust architecture hidden inside every AI interaction. Trust trigger number 1: fluency effect. When text is easy to read and grammatically perfect, our brains associate that fluency with intelligence and truth. This is called the processing fluency effect, documented extensively in cognitive psychology. AI output is almost always fluent. It never makes typos, it never rambles, and our brains score that as credible automatically, unconsciously. Trust trigger number 2. Authority signaling. AI systems often present information in formats that our culture associates with authority. Numbered lists, structured headers, formal tone, cited statistics. Even when those statistics are fabricated, a phenomenon called hallucination. The format tricks us into assuming credibility. We've been conditioned since school that a well formatted document means serious work. Trust trigger number 3. Speed and availability halo. AI responds instantly, no waiting, no let me get back to you. When a system responds in under 2 seconds with a comprehensive answer, humans intuitively associate that speed with competence. It's the same reason we trust a doctor who gives a quick diagnosis more than one who says, let me think. Efficiency signals mastery even when it signals nothing of the sort. Trust trigger number 4. Neutral tone bias. AI doesn't argue, it doesn't get defensive, it doesn't have bad days. Its neutral, even tone mimics what we associate with objectivity. Research on algorithm appreciation has consistently shown that people perceive algorithmic judgments as more fair and unbiased than human ones, even when the algorithm carries its own embedded biases from training data. Trust trigger number 5. Personalization illusion. Modern AI systems adapt their responses to your inputs. They mirror your vocabulary, your framing, your question structure. This creates what researchers call parasocial trust, the feeling that the system understands you specifically. It doesn't, but your brain doesn't care about that distinction when it's receiving what feels like a tailor made response. Trust trigger number 6. The machine objectivity myth. A 2019 study by S.S. Sundar and J. Kim at Penn State found that people trust computers more than humans with sensitive personal information, not because computers are more trustworthy, but because we perceive machines as incapable of judgment, malice, or agenda. This is, of course, completely wrong, but the perception is powerful and AI companies know it. 6 triggers. Any one of them is enough to nudge your brain toward trust. Most AI content hits all 6 simultaneously. And here's the thing, none of this is conspiracy. Most of it isn't even intentional. These trust triggers emerge naturally from how these systems are built, how they're trained, and how we've designed the interfaces around them. The result, however, is the same: synthetic trust, manufactured at scale, the biases that betray us, 5 cognitive traps. Now let's talk about what's happening inside your skull while all of this is going on. Because the trust triggers I just described, they don't work alone. They're turbocharged by a set of cognitive biases that we all carry. Every one of us. No exceptions. These aren't character flaws. They're features that became bugs in the age of AI content. Bias hash 1. Automation bias. This is the big one. Automation bias is the tendency to over rely on automated recommendations even when you know better. A landmark review in BMC Medical Informatics found that in 6% of clinical cases, doctors overrode their own correct diagnoses in favor of erroneous computer recommendations. Let me say that again. They knew the right answer, but they changed it because the computer said otherwise. That automation bias at work in one of the highest stakes environments imaginable. In 2025, research published by Springer Nature confirmed that this bias is now a critical challenge across healthcare law and public administration, specifically because of AI integration. Bias hash 2. Confirmation bias amplified. You already know confirmation bias. We seek information that validates what we already believe. AI systems make this dramatically worse. When you ask an AI a question, you often frame it with your assumptions baked in. The AI trained to be helpful tends to deliver answers that align with your framing. A 2025 study in cognitive psychology found that interactions with AI assistants actively reinforce confirmation bias, creating an echo chamber that feels like informed research because it looks so thorough. Bias hash 3. The Dunning-Kruger escalation. Here's a sinister one. The Dunning-Kruger effect describes how people with limited knowledge in a domain overestimate their competence. AI systems give everyone access to fluent, expert-sounding content on any topic in seconds. The result? People with almost no domain expertise can now produce and believe highly confident sounding misinformation. The confidence isn't theirs, it's the model's. But they absorb it A 2025 simulation study found that automation bias and authority bias together push people toward unquestioning trust in AI generated outputs, especially in educational contexts. Bias hash 4 Anthropomorphism bias. We're wired to personify things. We name our cars, we apologize when we bump into furniture. When AI systems speak in first person, use conversational language, express concern or enthusiasm, our brains activate the same social trust mechanisms they use for human relationships. Research on human AI interaction shows this consistently. Users attribute undue trustworthiness and moral reasoning capabilities to AI the moment it begins to communicate like a person. Chatbots named Arya or Max are exploiting this deliberately or not. Bias hash 5 Inherited bias loop. This one's the most recent and maybe the most alarming. A 2023 study in Scientific Reports documented what they call the inherited bias effect. Humans don't just accept AI recommendations, they absorb the bias is within them. When AI makes a biased suggestion and a human acts on it, that human's subsequent behavior and reasoning shifts to align with that bias even after the AI is removed from the loop. The bias outlives the interaction. We're not just trusting AI, we're becoming it. 5 biases. 5 ways your brain is working against your best interest when it encounters AI generated content. And look, I want to be really clear here, this isn't about being paranoid. Most AI interactions are completely benign. You ask it to draft an email. It drafts an email. Fine. But these biases matter enormously when the stakes get higher. When it's medical information, financial advice, legal guidance, electoral content, or journalism. That's where the gap between perceived trust and warranted trust becomes dangerous. A YouGov poll of 1,287 US adults found that 77% are concerned AI could pose a threat to humanity, yet 35% use it at least weekly. Only 5% deeply trust it. But behavioral data shows people rarely verify AI outputs before acting on them. The concern is stated, the vigilance is not practiced. This gap is precisely where synthetic trust lives. Real world case studies where it's already happening. Let's make this real. Because it's easy to talk about cognitive biases in the abstract. It's a lot harder to dismiss them when you see the actual cases. Case 1 Healthcare AI and the Diagnosis Gap. In 2025, a meta analysis published across multiple medical journals documented automation bias in mammography screening. Radiologists using AI screening tools changed their correct diagnoses in a meaningful percentage of cases, deferring to the AI even when their clinical judgment pointed elsewhere. This isn't one rogue doctor, this is a systemic, documented pattern across trained medical professionals. And the trust trigger isn't blind faith, it's that the AI scores higher on statistical accuracy in aggregate. The problem is, in individual cases, that aggregate performance doesn't protect the patient in front of you. News Global AI Misinformation Concern 2025, the KPMG University of Melbourne 2025 global study found that 64% of people globally are concerned that elections are being manipulated by AI powered bots and AI generated content. 87% want stronger laws to combat AI generated misinformation. Yet the same population continues to consume AI generated content at scale without verification tools in place. Awareness does not equal immunity. Case 2 The Legal Profession and Hallucinated Citations. You may have heard the story, it made global news of lawyers who submitted AI generated legal briefs citing cases that didn't exist, fabricated, made up by the model. And those lawyers filed them in real courts because the citations sounded real, specific, properly formatted, authoritative. This is fluency heuristic plus automation bias in a professional, high stakes context. The cost wasn't just embarrassment, it was sanctions, professional reputation damage, and a wake up call for every law firm in the world. Case 3 AI content at scale in journalism. Several major news platforms between 2033 and 2025 were found to have published AI generated content, sometimes with minimal editorial review, sometimes with none at all. In some cases, the articles contained factual errors, that human editors would have caught immediately. But the content looked like journalism. It had headlines, bylines, paragraph structure, quotes. Readers didn't know. And according to engagement data, they trusted it just as much as they trusted human written pieces. Sometimes more. Because the AI generated content was often more consistently formatted. Case 4. The cybersecurity blind spot. A 2025 study of cybersecurity professionals found that 47% exhibited automation bias when evaluating AI generated security alerts, meaning they deferred to the AI's judgment even when they had reasonable grounds for skepticism. In cybersecurity, where one missed alert can mean a data breach affecting millions of people, that trust miscalibration is terrifying. Pause, let those examples land before moving to solutions. And here's the thread connecting all four cases. In every single one, the people involved weren't naive. They weren't technophobes who stumbled into AI by accident. They were trained professionals, doctors, lawyers, journalists, security analysts who trusted the output because it looked and sounded credible. The format of the trust was indistinguishable from the real thing. That's what I mean by synthetic trust. It's not fake trust exactly, it's genuine trust misplaced. Design principles of trust. What responsible AI should look like. Okay, so now we know how synthetic trust forms and we've seen where it leads when unchecked. Let's talk about design. Because ultimately, trust in AI is not just a psychological problem, it's a design problem, and design can fix it. The field is called calibrated trust design. The idea that AI interfaces should be built to produce the right level of trust, not the maximum level of trust. More trust is not always better. Appropriate trust, calibrated to the actual reliability of the system in the specific context, is the goal. Here are 5 principles that researchers and ethicists are increasingly converging on. Principle 1. Uncertainty disclosure. AI systems should express confidence levels. I am 90% confident in this is more honest and ultimately more trustworthy than a statement delivered with false certainty. Some medical AI tools are now being redesigned to include explicit uncertainty ranges alongside recommendations. This reduces automation bias by reminding users that the system's output is probabilistic, not oracular. Principle 2. Explainability. Trust should be earned through transparency, not generated through surface confidence. Explainable AI systems that tell you why they reached a conclusion, not just what the conclusion is, enables calibrated trust. The 2025 cybersecurity study I mentioned found that when analysts understood the reasoning behind AI alerts, their automation bias dropped significantly. Show your work. It builds real trust. Principle 3. Friction by design. A 2025 study on automation bias mitigation found that nudges, small friction points that force users to reflect before acting, significantly reduce over reliance. A single prompt saying, "Does this look right to you?" before submitting an AI assisted form reduced error rates dramatically. Friction isn't a UX failure. In high stakes AI contexts, it's a safety feature. Principle 4. Source traceability. When AI generated content cites information, those citations should be real, verifiable, and linked. The legal hallucination problem is largely a source traceability failure. Responsible AI design requires that every factual claim be traceable to a real, checkable source, not a plausible sounding one, not a formatted one, a real one. Principle 5. AI literacy as infrastructure. The KPMG Melbourne study found that 70% of the global public believes AI regulation is urgently needed, and 87% want stronger laws against AI misinformation. But regulation alone isn't enough. The 2025 data also shows that people in countries with higher AI literacy, where people understand how models work, what their limits are, and what hallucination means, demonstrate more calibrated trust. Education is infrastructure. Teaching people how to use AI critically should be treated with the same seriousness as teaching people to read. These 5 principles aren't theoretical. Some of the most respected AI labs and companies in the world are actively building toward them. The European Union's AI Act, which came into full force in 2025, begins to encode some of these principles into law, particularly around high risk AI systems in healthcare, finance, and law enforcement. But we're still early, enormously early, and in the meantime, the responsibility doesn't lie only with designers and regulators. A significant part of it lies with us, with how we choose to engage with AI output. So, where does that leave us? I want to give you three things you can actually use. Three mental moves that I call your personal trust calibration protocol. Not because I think you should be paranoid, but because I think you deserve to be intentional. First move, ask what does this system not know? Before you act on AI generated content, ask yourself what's outside the model's training. What recent events might it be unaware of? What domain specific nuance is it probably missing? This single question breaks the fluency heuristic. It forces you to treat the AI as a starting point, not a final word. Second move, follow the confidence. When AI output sounds most confident, that's precisely when you should be most skeptical. Unwarranted certainty is a hallucination signature. Real experts hedge. Real data has error bars. If an AI gives you a perfectly clean, beautifully confident answer to a genuinely complex question, that's a reason to check, not to trust. Third move, ask, who benefits from my trust here? AI systems are deployed inside products, platforms, and services that have interests. Those interests don't always align with yours. When you're receiving AI generated recommendations for what to buy, who to vote for, what medication to take, what news to read, the question of incentive structure matters enormously. Trust that is engineered to serve the platform is not the same thing as trust you've earned through verification. Here's my final thought. The problem isn't AI. The problem isn't trust. Both of those things, carefully calibrated, are extraordinarily powerful. The problem is synthetic trust. Trust manufactured through design, through our own cognitive shortcuts, and through the sheer confidence of a system that doesn't actually know what it doesn't know. We are at a hinge moment. The decisions we make right now as users, as designers, as educators, as policymakers about how much autonomy we hand to AI systems and how critically we engage with their output. Those decisions will shape how these systems evolve. They will shape what we know, what we believe, what we act on. People trust machines more than you think. That's not a warning anymore. That's your starting point. I am Rohit Shetty. This has been Synthetic Trust. If this episode made you think differently about something you read this week, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and I'll see you next time.